If you're working on a rectangular project and you're looking for a really easy way to add texture and movement to your pattern, this is it. It's a 2-row repeat where you barely have to count because it is a 2-stitch, 2-row repeat. I'm going to be using Lion Brand Basic Stitch anti-pilling yarn. The recommended hook size for this yarn is 5 millimeters, but I do want a tighter stitch, so I will be using this Tulip Atimo 4 millimeter hook. I love this hook. It's one of my favorites. To start, we'll start with a slip knot, cross the yarn over itself, pull the bottom piece through the loop. Now, for this project, we're looking for an even number of chains. So here I am chaining 32. After you have chained the even number of stitches that you want the length or the width of your project to be, add an additional 3 chains. Those 3 chains in the foundation chain will count as the first double crochet stitch. I will be working into the back bumps of this chain for my first row, but if you prefer to work directly into the chains instead of the back bumps, because sometimes it's hard depending on how thick your yarn is, then feel free to do that, whatever you prefer. I'm going to work my first double crochet in the 5th bump from my hook because the first 3 chains count as the first double crochet, and those technically sit on top of the 4th chain. So my first stitch will be in the 5th chain or the 5th bump, whichever you're working into. Then we're going to double crochet in every single chain slash bump slash stitch all the way across until the very end of the row, and I will meet you there. We're just coming up to the end of row 1, double crochet in every stitch all the way across right to the end. Don't forget to double crochet into that last little stitch. And row 1 is done. All double crochet, pretty straightforward, standard stuff. Nothing to see here. Row 2 gets way more textural and much more interesting. So at the end of the row, chain 3. This chain 3 will count as the first double crochet in row 2. So you won't need to stitch into that base stitch right there. We're also going to skip the second stitch, and we're going to go in to the third stitch with a double crochet. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We are going to backtrack and double crochet into that stitch you just skipped, going behind the double crochet you just made. You're going to insert your hook and double crochet behind that first double crochet you made. And so you'll have 2 double crochets that are crossed over each other. Now, it doesn't look like much now, but this is definitely one of those patterns that really comes together and looks really cohesive as you keep going. Okay, we're going to skip the next stitch, and in the following stitch, we're going to double crochet. And we're going to do the same thing that we just did, which is backtrack and double crochet into the stitch you just skipped, but from behind. So go behind the double crochet you just made and double crochet into the skipped stitch. And you'll have another crossed double crochet stitch. Again, skip a stitch, and in the following stitch, double crochet. Now we're going to backtrack into the skip stitch and double crochet into that behind the double crochet you just made. It feels a little bit awkward when you first start doing this because it feels like you're twisting the project and you're not really sure if you're doing it right because it looks a little wonky, but trust me, this will all come together. So again, skip a stitch, double crochet into the following stitch. Now backtrack and go behind the double crochet you just made to double crochet into the skipped stitch. Now we're going to keep on going until the end of the row. Skip a stitch, double crochet into the following stitch, backtrack, and double crochet into the skip stitch from behind the double crochet you just made. We're going to keep going, skip a stitch, double crochet into the following stitch. Now backtrack by going behind that double crochet to double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. We'll keep going to the end of the row, and I will meet you when we're done with row 2. At the end of row 2, you will notice that you have sort of run out of stitches. That last stitch, which is the third chain in the turning chain, let's just pop a double crochet into that to end the row so it's neat and tidy. Row 2 is done, and you can see the fruits of your labors. The cross double crochets look so nice. We'll do a chain 3 at the end of row 2. Again, that counts as the first double crochet in row 3, so you won't need to double crochet into that base stitch at the base of that chain 3. We're going to place our first double crochet of row 3 into the second stitch. And because this is a 2-row repeat, and we've already done 2 rows, row 3 is a repeat of row 1. So we're going to double crochet in every stitch all the way across. And I think that row 3 in this pattern, or obviously in any 2-row repeat, is when you see the pattern really start to come together, the piece really starts to take shape, and things start to look much more cohesive. So continue double crocheting in every stitch all the way across to the end, and I will see you at the end of row 3. We're coming up to the end of row 3, just a straight up double crochet row. Don't forget to place a double crochet at the top of that turning chain. Let's take a look where we're at. We're going to do a chain 3 at the end of this row. Just like every other row, the chain 3 counts as the first double crochet of the next row. So this is going to be a repeat of row 2. You don't need to double crochet into that base stitch. We're going to skip the first stitch and we're going to double crochet into the third stitch. Now this is the backtracking part again, so we're going to double crochet from behind, backtrack into that skip stitch for that really pretty crossed double crochet effect. We're going to skip a stitch and in the following stitch double crochet. And just like in row 2, we're going to go behind the double crochet we just made and double crochet into the stitch that you just skipped. It is a bit awkward in the beginning doing these cross double crochets, but you do start to get the hang of it and it'll feel really intuitive after a few rows. Again, skip a stitch, double crochet, backtrack, go behind the double crochet you just made, and double crochet into the stitch that you skipped. Skip a stitch, double crochet into the following stitch, go behind that double crochet, and double crochet into the stitch that you just skipped. We're going to do this all the way across until we get to the very end of row 4, where we'll have done a repeat of the 2-row repeat. And I'll see you at the end of this row. As we get to the end of this 4th row, we're going to treat it exactly like the end of the 2nd row. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you only have 1 stitch left, so you won't be able to do any more X's. So place 1 double crochet at the top of the turning chain from the row below, just to make the edges neat and straight. We're going to do 1 more row together. We're going to chain 3. That counts as the first double crochet in the next row, so you don't need to stitch into that base stitch. You can put your first double crochet into the 2nd stitch from your hook. And we're going to double crochet all the way across. Again, this is a repeat of row 1. And obviously, after this, if you continue on, which you can continue on as long as you like, this will make a beautiful scarf, or in a larger format, if you do more chains to start with, it would be a great blanket because it's so textural and so pretty. You can put a border on it. It's one of those patterns that looks like you put a lot of effort into it, but once you get the hang of it, it's also one of the patterns where you don't need to do a lot of counting, and it's not super precise, and it's just a 2-stitch repeat in the cross double crochet rows, so it's not super complicated. And if you mess up a little bit, it's really easy to go back. I love patterns like this, especially ones that have a lot of texture and depth and movement, and they look great on both sides. So we're going to finish off this row together of just double crochets, and I will meet you at the end of this row and we'll take a look at what we have. As we come up to the end of row 5, which is just the first row repeated, all double crochets, let's see what we have. You see how the more you go along with this pattern, the more it takes shape. It looks great on both sides. On one side, it's slightly more three-dimensional. On this back side, it looks like a beautiful geometrical pattern. It catches the light really well. You get really great stitch definition. And I find this looks really good in a yarn that's just slightly fuzzy and even slightly glossy. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I love doing these tutorials and I hope you like them too. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.